Hi again. So today we will be discussing about cost concepts for decision making. In this lecture, um, we will be covering mga cost terminologies that we will be using um, for this course. Okay, so there are a variety of costs to be considered in an engineering economic analysis. These costs differ in their frequency of occurrence, relative magnitude, and degree of impact on the study. And in this section, we define a number of cost categories and illustrate how they should be treated in an engineering economic analysis. So, as you can see, guys, before I learned about Ganesha, or even in high school pa, I only know kung mo-refer kag mga expenses or kung refer kag mga palitunon and what, ang mga basic na ko na nahibawan before are total cost, deficit, meaning negative, total, summation sa sum or total sa imong mga nagasto, inanan lang. But daghan pa day klase-klase ng mga cost. Especially that you are taking up this course, the engineering economics, so prepare to learn more about this different type of cost. Okay, so before that, let me share this quote from Arthur M. Wellington. He said, the correct solution to any problem depends primarily on a true understanding of what the problem really is. Yeah, I think that's really true. Okay, you cannot simply na kung wrong ang imong pag-interpret or wrong imong understanding sa problem, then automatically wrong po ang imong solution, right? So yeah. Now let's move to the first set of terminology that we will be learning in this topic. So we have first the fixed cost. It is defined here fixed costs are those unaffected by changes in activity level over a feasible range of operations for the capacity or capability available. So typical fixed cost includes what are these? Insurance and taxes on facilities, general management and administrative salaries, license fees, and interest costs on borrowed capital. Meaning fixed ni sila. Yeah. Any cost is subject to change. We all know that one. Diba? Mag-vary man good. But fixed costs tend to remain constant over a specific range of operating conditions. If mahitabo na ka ng larger changes in usage of resources na mahitabo sa isa ka company or what, if naay expansion ang plant or even mag-shutdown, diba dako man yun na thing or na-change. So fixed cost can be affected. That's the time na pwede siya mag-vary or pwede siya mag-change. Now, the variable costs are those associated with an operation that varies in total with the quantity of output or other measures of activity level. Meaning, we have here, example, the cost of material and labor used in a product or service are variable costs because they vary in total with the number of output units, even though the cost per unit stay the same. So, yeah, variable costs are cost nimo nga gadepende sa imong operation that varies in total with the quantity of output or ang activity level nimo. Okay, and now the incremental cost is what we call also the incremental revenue, and is the additional cost or revenue that results from increasing the output of a system by one or more units. Incremental is the additional cost, or revenue. So incremental cost is often associated with a go-no-go decisions that involve a limited change in output or activity level. Okay, so let's have the let's have an example for our fixed and variable cost. Let's read the problem. In connection with surfacing a new highway, a contractor has a choice of two sites on which to set up the asphalt mixing plant equipment. The contractor estimates that it will cost $2.75 per cubic yard mile to haul the asphalt paving material for the mixing plant to the job location, kung asa located ang job mismo. So factors relating to the two mixing sites are as follows. Okay. So in the table, sa inyong screen, on your screen, we have the cost factor and ang difference sa cost sa site A and site B. So the job requires 50,000 cubic yards of mixed asphalt paving material. It is estimated that 4 months, that is equivalent to 17 weeks of 5 working days per week will be required for the job. Compare the two sites in terms of their fixed, variable, and total costs. Okay? So assume that the cost of the return trip is negligible. Hindi na nato apilon ang return trip, which is the better site. For the selected site, okay, later. So which is the better site? So our solution would look like this. So as you can see, si cost nato classify na to siya as fixed and variable. Now the rent, setup, flag person are the fixed na mga fixed cost nimo. And variable cost si hauling because this varies kung pila ang imo gusto na product. In this case, dalaway ang let's move with that later. Let's discuss that later. Si fixed, bahala pag mo increase ning hauling nimo or pila iyang gusto i-achieve. Na fixed na gini si rent, set up, flag person, naana na gina siya daan. Si hauling depends on the operation. Okay? Now, site A, sa rent, I think that's the same with the given. Tama ba? Ang rent nato is, so times 4 months lang ni siya, kay estimated man nato ang contractor ang 4 months so that he would complete the job. So times 4 ang rent na 2K for site A and 7K for site B. Setup and removal is as is sa given. Am I correct? $15,000 and $50,000. Flag person not required for site A and sa site B is 5 working days times 17 weeks times $150 per day. So you will have $12,750 for site B sa flag person. Hauling is computed as 4 months times 50,000 na required sa imong job. Now, this makes it a variable cost. Kaya mo ni siya ang i-require. 50,000 times ang hauling expense nimo na 2.75 cubic yard per mile. Cubic yard mile. Okay, so mile. So 550,000 and 412,500. So you will add that up. Ang total niya is 573K and $503,250 for site B. Okay, so now based on the total cost nila, which do you think is better? Diba? Obviously ang site B. Even though it has larger fixed cost, napod siya, it has ang total niya kay smaller ang iyang total cost for the job. And note that the extra fixed costs of site B are being traded off for reduced variable cost at this site. Okay, so yeah. Now let's move. Let's take this kanang part of the problem. For the selected site, how many cubic yards of paving material does the contractor have to deliver before starting to make a profit? If paid $12 per cubic yard delivered to the job location. So, ganun sa siya maka-profit. Now we have these computations. The contractor will begin to make a profit at the point where total revenue equals total cost as a function of the cubic yards of asphalt pavement mix delivered. So based on site B, since site B man ang atong preferred na site, we have 3 times $2.75 equals 8.25. Muna siya ang invariable cost per cubic yard nga ma-deliver. So again, ito. 75. So 3 miles times 2.75 cubic yard mile. Okay. And that is 8.25. Now, again, total cost is equal to total revenue. This is the point na mag-start siya o profit. Okay? So, we have, from that, we have this kanang equation nga kaning 90,750 is your fixed cost sa imong site B. Fixed cost sa imong site B. Muna ang total. Plus 8.25x equal siya to $12. Muna siya ang iset niya diri nga. If bayaran og $12 per cubic yard delivered to the job location. So, X. Compute for X. Let your X be the variable na kinahanglanon nimo kung pila ka cubic yards of material ang dapat nimo ma-deliver so that he will start gaining profit. Start pa ha. Okay, of course, total cost is equal to total revenue. Okay, so therefore, so for X, you have $24,000 cubic yard delivered. Therefore, by using site B, a contractor will begin to make a profit or job after delivering 24,200 cubic yards of material. Okay. Now, our second set of cost terminology, we have the these frequently encountered cost terms involve most of the common elements that also fit in the previous overlapping categories of fixed and variable cost. So first, let's take this direct costs. Direct costs are costs that can be reasonably measured and allocated to specific output or work activity. Okay, ang labor and material costs directly associated with the product, service, or construction activity are direct costs. So, for example, ang materials needed to make a pair of scissors would be considered as a direct cost. So, unsa na material mo ni ang product? How did he make it? Unsay material? Unsay direct cost pag maghimo ka og scissors? Kung metal, then plastic handle. So, meaning, consider na to siya as direct cost. Okay? And next is the indirect cost. It is defined as the costs that are difficult to allocate to a specific output or work activity. Normally, they are costs allocated through a selected formula such as proportional to direct labor hours, direct labor dollars, direct material dollars, to the outputs or work activities. Okay, for example, the cost of common tools, general supplies, and equipment maintenance in a plant are treated as indirect costs because because in a plant, let's assume na ang plant is big kaayo and daghan kaayo yung mga operation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 before ka makakuan of certain product is lisod ka og trace kung unsa ni na mga indirect costs sa kuan ba ning operation, blah blah blah. Basta difficult to allocate to a specific output or work activity. So that's what you consider as indirect cost. So overhead consists of plant operating costs that are not direct labor or direct material costs. Again, overhead consists of plant operating costs that are not direct labor or direct material costs. So, ang terms na indirect costs, overhead, and burden are used interchangeably. Ganun. Okay. So, examples of mga overhead na mga costs are electricity, general repairs, property taxes, and supervision. Ang administrative and selling expenses are usually added to direct costs and overhead costs to arrive at a unit selling price for a product or service. Okay. So, you also have a standard, what we call the standard cost. These are planned cost per unit of output that are established in advance of actual production or service delivery. They are developed from anticipated na direct labor hours. Nakaset na siya daan, 8 hours to make this para makakam up ta ani nga product. So, materials and overhead categories with their established cost per unit. Because total overhead costs are associated with a certain level of production, this is an important condition that should be remembered when dealing with standard cost data. Standard costs play an important role in cost control and other management functions. So, here are some typical uses of so under the standard cost. Number one is estimating future manufacturing costs. Okay, so kung mag-estimate ka o mag-expand ang company, what if mag-manufacture ka og aning product? So pila kaya? So importante nga maggamit siya as basis sa imong proposal. Okay? Number two is measuring operating performance by comparing actual cost per unit with the standard unit cost. Yeah, operating performance by comparing actual cost per unit with the standard unit cost. Okay. So preparing bids on products or services requested by customers. So if makapansin mo ng kanang mga proposals, mga projects like mga roads, highways, school buildings, mga ingana. Dahil siya mga proposal, it is based on the standard cost para makakam up sila og amount, money ang bidding amount, money ang kanang total na among i-bid for the certain services or product. Okay. Number four, the fourth one is establishing the value of work in process and finished inventories. Yeah, value of work in process and finished inventories. So I think this will serve as the basis of inyong standard cost kung under delivered or over delivered ba ang operations ninyo or what, regardless sa kung unsay product ba or services ang inyong gina-offer. Okay. So I think that's it for standard cost. Okay. Let's move to cash cost versus book cost. Cash versus book. Okay? A cost that involves payment of cash is called a cash cost. And results in a cash flow. To distinguish it from one that does not involve a cash transaction and is reflected in the accounting system as a non-cash cost. So this non-cash cost is often referred to as a book cost. Kung cash ang transaction, cash cost. Kung non-cash, then book cost. So cash costs are estimated from the perspective established for the analysis and are the future expenses incurred for the alternatives being analyzed. So these book costs are costs that do not involve mga cash payments, but rather represent the recovery of past expenditures over a fixed period of time. So, ang book costs are costs that do not involve cash payments but rather represent the recovery of past expenses. Ang most common example of book cost is the depreciation charge for the use of assets such as plant and equipment. So, yeah. One good example ni siya. In engineering economic analysis, only those costs that are cash flows or potential nga cash flows from defined perspective for the analysis need to be considered. Okay. Ang depreciation, on the other hand, is not a cash flow. Pero importante siya sa analysis only because it affects income taxes which are mga cash flows. Okay, dito ra siya applicable si depreciation. We will be discussing that one sa next na mga chapters. Okay. Okay, next. Sunk cost. A sunk cost is one that has occurred in the past and has no relevance to estimate of future costs and revenues related to an alternative course of action. Thus, a sunk cost is common to all alternatives. It is not part of the future perspective na mga cash flows and can be disregarded in an engineering economic analysis. For instance, ang sunk costs are non-refundable cash outlays such as earnest money on a house or money spent on a passport. So, yeah. So, ang concept of sunk cost is illustrated in this simple example. Okay, let's read this. Suppose that Joe College finds a motorcycle he likes and pays $40 as a down payment, which will be applied to the $1,300 purchase price, but which much must be forfeited if he decides not to take the cycle. So over the weekend, Joe finds another motorcycle he considers equally desirable for a purchase price of $1,230. Damay. For the purpose of deciding which cycle to purchase, the $40 is a sunk cost and thus would not enter into the decision except that it lowers the remaining cost of the first cycle. The decision then is between paying an additional $1,260, so yeah, for the first motorcycle versus $1,230 for the second motorcycle. So nagets ra ang sunk cost na material na to, concept niya. So in the end, ang magmatter ra is ang 1,260 versus the 1,230. Okay. So in summary, the sunk costs are irretrievable consequences of past decisions. Naka-down payment man siya 40. Diba? From the $1,300 nga total purchase price sa motorcycle 1, sa option 1 niya. So, murag, kung nakakita siya much cheaper nga 1,230, so murag ma-disregard na to ang $40, he have to make a decision kung 1,260 mo go ba siya agto or ang 1,230. Of course, para to gyud ng 1,230, so na siya difference nga 30, so dito I think ambot siya go kung sayangan pa siya sayang $40 nga gidown. So therefore, ang sunk costs are irrelevant in the analysis and comparison of alternatives in the end that affect the future. Kung asa gyud i-apply yun. Even though it's sometimes emotionally difficult to do so, sunk costs should be ignored except possibly to the extent that their existence assists you to anticipate better what will happen in the future. So, na cases na nagyapon siya pulos. like mo affect siya sa imong future decisions, then you have to consider it. If not, then ang alternatives in the end clearly ang imong basihan. Okay? Next, the opportunity cost. An opportunity cost is incurred because of the use of limited resources, such that the opportunity to use those resources to monetary advantage is an alternative use is forgone. Okay? Thus, it is the cost of the best rejected opportunity and is often hidden or implied. So, here's an example. A student is a student who could earn, pwede siya maka-earn of 20,000, in peso na lang, 20,000 peso for working during a year. So, kung mo-work siya, kung ka na student, mo-work siya, kung meron po kayong 20,000. Sige, let's proceed with that. 20,000 a year if mag-work siya, student. But, he chooses instead to go to school for a year and spend 5,000 to do so. So, nag-spend na noon siya 5,000 instead of kanang working, ni eskwela na lang siya and spend 5,000. So, ang opportunity cost of going to school, kani, kuan man siya sa school, ni pili man siya, for that year is pila, 25,000. Kay, compose na siya sa 5,000 na cash outlay niya, magigasto niya sa school, and sa 20,000 nga for income forgone. Meaning, katong wala niya na kitaong tana niya, pero wala niya na gain from working tana. Okay, so this figure neglects the influence of income taxes. So, dili lang nato kwentahon kung pila na ba siya tax, or ang student pa, ibutang na to nga kaninga student, wala gid siya ga-earn while na siya sa school. So that's opportunity cost. That's the concept of opportunity cost. Okay. Now, next is the life cycle cost. So in engineering practice, the term life cycle is often encountered. The term refers to a summation of all the costs related to a product, structure, system, or service during its lifespan. Okay. Okay, so the life cycle, this is figure 2-1. Naman na siya, phases of life cycle and their relative cost. The life cycle begins with identification of the economic need or want, the requirement, and ends with the retirement and disposal activities. So again, mag-start siya sa unsa ang need, unsa ang want, and ends with retirement or disposal activities. It is a time, kita ba na ito nila eh? So it is a time horizon that must be defined in the context of the specific situation, whether highway, bridge, a jet engine for commercial aircraft, or an automated flexible manufacturing cell for a factory. So the end of the life cycle may be projected on a functional or economic basis. For example, ang amount of time na ang structure or piece of equipment is able to perform economically, diba, may be shorter than that permitted by its physical capability. So pwede na siya. Changes in the design efficiency of a boiler illustrate this situation. Ang old nga boiler nimo may be able to produce the steam required, pero economically, but not economically enough for the intended use. Okay, pwede siya inhala. Maka-deliver siya kay ma-serve man niya yung purpose na steam na gusto nimo. Pero economically, dili enough sa yung intended use. Okay. So the life cycle may be divided into two general time periods. So, focus on your screen sa left side. Sa bottom na I don't have a pointer here. So, acquisition phase and operation phase. Each of these phases is further subdivided into interrelated but different activities. So kung asa siya mag-divide mo na siya ang iyang mga activities per phase niya. Okay, let's start with the acquisition phase. Ang acquisition phase begins with an analysis of the economic need or want. The analysis necessary to make explicit the requirement for the product, structure, system, or service. Then, with the requirement explicitly defined, after ma-define na siya, the other activities in the acquisition phase can proceed in a logical sequence. So, what's next here? Ang conceptual. Okay, the conceptual design activities translate the defined technical and operational requirements into a preferred preliminary design. So, included in these activities are development of the feasible alternatives and engineering economic analysis to assist in the selection of the preferred preliminary design. So, apply the first part sa mga first part sa itong topic before, and katong mag-develop of mga analyses and alternatives and also advanced development and prototype testing activities to support the preliminary design work occurred during the period. Okay, so the next group of activities in the acquisition phase is the detailed design and planning for production or construction. So here, this step is followed by the activities necessary to kailangan ka mag-prepare, mag-acquire, and make ready for operation the facilities and other resources needed. So again, engineering economy studies are an essential part of the design process so that you are able to analyze and compare ang mga alternatives and to assist in determining the final detailed design. So magamit dito nato at mga gitang discuss. And in the operation phase, the right side, the product, delivery, or construction at the end items or service under operation or customer use occur. This phase ends with retirement from active operation or use and often disposal of the physical assets na mag-start, dira na siya ang disposal of physical assets involved. So, the priorities for engineering economy studies during the operation phase are first, achieving efficient and effective support to operation. Second is determining whether or when replacement of assets should occur. And third is protecting the timing or retirement of disposal activities. So this figure 2-1 shows relative cost profile for the life cycle and the greatest potential for achieving life cycle cost savings is in the acquisition phase. So sa acquisition phase pa lang, dito nimo ma-compute ang potential nga ang pag-achieve sa life cycle, greatest potential for achieving life cycle cost savings. So how much of the life cycle cost for a product, for example, can be saved if kung pila ang mas save nimo is dependent on many factors. However, effective engineering design and economic analysis during this phase are critical in maximize potential savings. So kung nakay mga possible makat na mga expenses, then cut it and that will go to cost savings nimo. Sa acquisition phase pa lang. Because sa acquisition phase, dito pa ka mag-prepare, dito pa ka mag-plano, dito pa ka diba? Kay kung na-acquire na nimo siya tanan, then naka-proceed na ka sa operation phase, ay, lesson learned na lang. Next time, we could have cut 50% sa ani DI nga kinahanglanon nato, mas cheaper di ay ni. So sa acquisition phase, dito ka makadetermine sa kung pila ang maximum or ma-maximize din ang potential savings. Yeah, so okay, I have this slide maybe so that's what I mentioned earlier. So In connection with the life cycle cost gihapon, one purpose of the life cycle cost concept ng God is to make explicit ang mga, di ba, ingon ko, interrelated effects of cost sa total lifespan for a product. An objective of the design process is to minimize the life cycle cost while meeting other performance requirements. How do you do that? By making the right trade-offs between prospective costs during acquisition and during the operation phase. So, ang cost elements of the life cycle that need to be considered will vary the situation. Because of their common use, however, several basic life cost categories will now be defined. Now, we have this investment, tawag na to investment cost. Understandable siya, but this is defined as the capital required for most of the activities in the acquisition phase. Pila ang imong invest na cost. Okay? Then, in simple cases, such as acquiring specific equipment, an investment cost may be incurred as a single expenditure. Okay, isa lang siya. Isa lang siya. On a large, complex construction project na mismo ang involved, pwede siya series of expenditures over an extended period could be incurred. This cost is also called a capital investment. Next is the operating and maintenance cost, O&M, or we call this project as MOOE, maintenance, operating. Forgot the other O, pero ang E is expense. So this includes many of the recurring annual expenses items associated with the operation phase of the life cycle. Okay, and the direct and indirect cost of operations associated with the 5 primary resource areas. Rodrigo tuyok ang ang cost sa people, sa machines, sa materials, energy, and information. Muna siya ang mga major part of the cost ani nga category sa O and M. Okay, again, you have people, operate, machines, ang energy, and materials and information. Muna siya ang major part of the cost sa O and M. Disposal cost includes those non-recurring costs of shutting down the operation and the retirement and disposal of assets at the end of the life cycle. So normally, costs associated with this personal materials transportation and one-time special activities can be expected. Pwede siya. These costs will be offset in some instances by receipts. Ma-account mo siya through, will be offset, in some instances by receipts from the sale of assets with remaining market value. A classic example of a disposal cost is that associated with cleaning up a site where a chemical processing plant can be located. So, so that is the end of some. This is not all the kanang cost terminology that we will be using, but these are some important cost concepts that we need to learn for design economics. So I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.